About routing, and we're going to be using our favorite project, which is our RESTful Tasks API. So let's go into our project here and let's get it running. So nodemon server.js, and then I also want to have my Angular project rebuilding constantly. So I'm going to open up this second terminal here. We'll go into the public folder, say ng build -- watch. Okay. So ng-serve would, I want to say it mostly accomplishes the same thing, only ng-serve actually provides you with a server as well. So here, we're serving our file from our server.js, right? Versus if you do ng-serve, it's Angular that's providing the server for you. Okay. So that's if you didn't have a backend.
Also, I realized...
Like the weather API assignment, for instance, doesn't have any kind of a backend. We're actually making requests to some outside API.
Oh.
So you guys can use ng-serve for that if you're doing that assignment. Okay. All right, so we've got our project running in both places, both the backend and the front end. And what we want to cover today is how can we create multiple, quote, pages on the front end, right? Because right now, we only have inside of our source, I've got two components right now. So I've got the app component, which is just where the entire application lives. And then I've got this sub-component, this task component. And we were just using that to show a task down at the bottom of the screen. So today what we're going to do is we're going to create some new routes where we can do some different things. So maybe we'll have a route where we can go view a single task. Maybe we'll have a route where we can create a new task. And then we'll have a route where we can just go and see all the tasks. All right? So that's essentially our goal here. Now we haven't yet looked at one of the files inside of our Angular app, and it's this one. It's going to be the app-routing.module.ts. Okay? So that's where all of our routing is going to be taking place. So let's just go take a quick look at that file. And I'll close the terminal down there. So notice here on line 5, we just have this array of routes. And right now, it's empty, meaning that I really only have one route in my application. And it just goes directly to that app component, right? Okay. So in order for us to create some new routes, we also have to create new components. You guys remember how we do this to create new components? NGGC, yeah, if we want to keep it super succinct, I'll spell it out for you guys. So let's go to our public directory, and then let's say ng generate component, and then the component we're going to generate is just going to be called all tasks. Okay, so we'll go all tasks. Okay, excellent. Then we're also going to generate a single task component where we can just view one task. So let's go NGGC this time for short. Single, whoops, task. Okay, and then finally, or actually I'm going to generate two other things. So we've got this single task. We're also going to generate a new task component, which is just going to be a page that displays our form to take in new tasks. So say new task. And then I'm going to generate one more component. And just kind of as an aside, you guys probably won't really need this for the test, but I'm just going to show you, we can have kind of like a page not found component. If all the other routes fall through and we don't have a valid route for that, we can hit the page not found. So let's just generate that. NGGC page not found. Okay, cool. And what we've been doing is every time we generate a new Angular application, that you guys remember how it always asks you, do you want routing? Okay? And so when we say yes, that's what's causing Angular to create this file for us. It knows that we want routing, so it's automatically creating this structure for us. All we really need to do is just fill in this routes array. Okay? So let's work on it. So inside the routes array, we're going to create some different objects, one for each route we want to have. Okay? So let's say I want to have a path of tasks and then some ID of a task. So let's do that. So let's say tasks / ID. Okay? And that should look kind of familiar from our Express stuff, right? We're just using the :ID to say this could be any ID of any task. All right? And then the component part of this is what component do I want that particular route to pull up in my application? Okay? So I should be able to use some autocomplete here. I want this to pull up single task. And I'm just going to start typing this in. Component. And then if I tab, notice how it did what I needed to up there, which is import that component for me. Okay?
But your component name has a dash.
Yeah, actually, so in terms of the way that this thing is, the naming conventions work, if you name something with a hyphen like I did, like single dash task, notice how it converted the name to uppercase and took the dash out. So it turned into single task component, all one word like that. All right. So the next route that we also wanted to have a new task component, right? And we may want to put that on top of this. Why do you guys think I want to put it on top of this?
Which one are you doing?
So I'm going to do the new task right here. Well, the reason why is because if this gets triggered, the / ID route, what it's going to do is we're going to hit the actual single task page, right? And then it's going to go try to retrieve a task that has an ID of new. I don't really want that to happen. Okay. So let's put this up here. So we'll say path tasks / new, and then the component for that is going to be new task component. And again, I can tab to just bring that in. It's kind of cool. Okay, we also have an all tasks component, so we can put that down here. Let's say path tasks component will be all tasks component. And again, it brought it in for me, so that's nice. Finally, the other thing that I want to put down here is just this page not found thing. And again, this is not super critical for you guys. I'm just showing it to you in case you want to know for your projects and so forth. So down here, if I create a path that's just 2 asterisks like that, that's just going to be a wildcard path. Okay? So we'll match anything. If we've already gotten past all of our routes up here, we'll get this. It will actually trigger this route. Okay? So let's bring in our page not found. Page not found component. Okay? And then the other thing that I wanted to show you guys in the routing here before we actually start working with these routes is just that we also may need to do some redirects from time to time. Okay? So what if I wanted to redirect from the root route and take somebody up to tasks, for instance? We can do that here inside of our routing. So if a person hits the root of my Angular project and I simply want them to go to tasks instead, we can set that up here in the routing file. So I'll show you guys how to do that. So we'll create another object here. And the path for this one is just going to be an empty string. because that will be the index route. Now, one thing to be aware of, because it's easy to get tripped up here, is that these routes in Angular do not have a preceding /, whereas the ones in Express did, right? So that's an important difference to note. Okay, so if I hit a path of the index like that, what I want to do is I want to redirect to, and then I'm just going to go /tasks. The other thing that's important to do, so if I save this right now, let me open up my terminal. Oops. When we load up this app right now, Angular may complain to us about this right here, this path that's just a blank string. So we usually need to add something to that to say the path match that we want is going to be a full match. Okay? So right now, in theory, we should be able to hit all these different routes on our application. Now, we haven't really done a lot of the logic associated with that, but let's just kind of start testing things out and see what we're getting, okay? All right. So I've got my project on localhost 4500, right?
What is the full meaning? Sorry.
Path match equals full.
Yeah.
So it just means we're matching the entirety of the path, including, so I don't want to confuse you guys, but you can also have nested routes. And nested routes are also not really super important within the context of the exam. But a path match of full means that we're matching both this component and also any parent routes as well. So if we had like a parent route that had some prefix in front of it, it would be matching the entire path. Okay. All right, so notice here, I've loaded up my app. I went to the root route, and what happened? Where did I end up? You guys see that? We ended up back at the tasks route. So why is that? Because I set up my redirect, right? So I said right here, if I hit this index route, let's redirect to /tasks. Okay, cool. And then I've got my path match full here, so we came back up here. Now let's take a look here at this. I've got this all tasks works. Where's that coming from?
All tasks app.
Yeah, so this all tasks component that I made, it's rendering down there at the bottom of the page. So let's look again at our main component. So if we go app.component.html, notice here that I've got this router outlet down here at the bottom, line 44. We haven't really talked about this yet, but can you guys sort of sense what's going on here? This is where our routes are actually rendering inside that router outlet. Okay? So let's try some of our other routes as well. So if we go tasks/new, I'm expecting it to say something down here like, tasks new works, right? Because we haven't really put anything in those routes yet. Uh-oh. What's going on here? We didn't actually get our application here, right? Our Angular application. What kind of message does this look like? It looks like it's coming from Express. Express is saying, we cannot make a GET request to that specific route. Okay? So we're gonna go over quickly how to solve this problem because you guys will most likely run into this on your own. Some of you will probably run into this. And on the test, if I'm grading it and I try to refresh the page on a route like this, and if I see that, I might say something like, "Remember Thursday?" I don't know. I'll see like, there he is. Hey, Ryan. All right, so let's look at our Express app and figure out how we can solve this problem and actually correctly route this to Angular. So let's go down to our server. And inside of our config folder, remember we have this routes file right here. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some kind of a catch-all route down at the bottom of this, which is going to say, if I didn't match any of my API routes right here, what I want to do is just give back my Angular application. Okay?
I did have a question. So on all these it says API tasks, but in the routes for the Angular part, it's just tasks. How does it circumvent that?
Well, because what's going to happen is the first routes that get evaluated are going to be these API routes, right? And then finally, if we get past all of these API routes, we'll get to a route that's going to catch all of our Angular routes. And I'm going to show you how to do that right now.
And correct me if I'm wrong on this, because I was
yeah.
confused about the exact same thing, but
Okay.
I actually learned on our project when you're doing you're doing testing with a huge group. So like in our group, we had 3 people, and one person was like working on some of like the HTML and had to be in the controllers and things like that. So with the API routes, you can test and add to the database without, because you can mess with those folders while they're working on them, obviously, because it mess everything up. So that's kind of primarily the reason for the API route. So I was kind of confused about that as well.
I guess my question was when he went to initially it worked when you went just to tasks, but it wasn't API/tasks.
Oh,
Yeah, so what happened initially is that when I went to the root route, what middleware was making that work? So if we go to our server.js, notice here that I have this middleware on line 6, which is saying I want to look inside my public/dist/public folder to see if this file exists.
Right.
So if I make a request to just the index route, it's going to look inside this public folder to see, do I have an index.html file? I do, right? So then what Express is going to do is just going to pass back that index.html file to the browser. Now, once we got into that index.html, then Angular starts doing its work eventually and determines, okay, the route that we're on right now is the index route. But inside of our routes configuration, we have a redirect that we need to do. So it automatically did the redirect for us.
I guess I get all that part.
Mhm.
It was that it was just redirect/tasks. It wasn't redirect API/tasks.
Well, why would we redirect to API/tasks?
That's the route.
No. Our API routes are simply for serving up data. That's it. Those are not going to be our front end routes that a user is going to see. Okay. All right. Cool. So let me close this again, and all we're going to do is we're going to add this catch-all here on line 10. So I'll say app.all, meaning no matter what the kind of request, whether it's a get, post, put, and so forth. And then I'll put inside here an asterisk, meaning no matter what the path is and what the type of request, I want to handle it this way. So I want to say there's going to be a callback function with a request and a response. And I can just underscore that. And all we're going to do is we're going to send back that HTML file that we have in our public dist public folder. Okay. So I'll say res.send file. We'll say the current directory that we're in. Now I have to do some pathing here. So the current directory that we're in is the config directory, right? I have to go up one level to be inside the server directory, and then up another level so that I can start getting into my public folder. So up one level, into my public folder, into the dist folder, and then into the public folder, and then I want to give back the index.html. All right, before we move on, I want somebody to walk me through this code. Ivan. Yeah, please get the door. Thank you, Lance. This is critical because I can almost guarantee you some of you guys are going to make a mistake on this or mess this
This
up.
is why we're not getting our, we're getting that get error message.
Exactly, yeah. We're trying to take care of that right now.
Go back up.
All right.
We're just trying to get the
All right, start from the beginning. So the beginning of line 10, what's happening?
All,
So what did I say all means?
solve all
All the routes.
That's what you just said. I thought all.
All the different possible request types, right? No matter if it's a GET request, POST request, PUT request, and so forth. Okay? So we're invoking that function, right? Okay? And then what are the arguments that we're passing, and what do they mean? Sure. Who do you want to phone? Miguel? Anna? All right, Anna. You got it.
So like no matter what the name of the route is, that's what the star is for any kind of route, like if it's API/task/whatever.
So specifically, that means what the path could be anything.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Then you are going to you're going to request and have a response. And you're gonna have
Yeah. So the other thing that we're passing in is this is a callback function, right? Okay. That takes in a request and a response.
and then it's going to go and send the file that is located up in the directory at up two levels, the public/disk/public folder, and then you're going to render the index.html file.
Correct. Now, what if I put this in my server.js? So the question came up the other day. Connor was kind of asking, should this be here or should it be in server.js? That's kind of up to your preference. So if you guys want to do it in server.js, let's just rewrite it there so we can kind of practice doing it both places. So after I've brought in my routes down here, I can write the exact same function, only the path is going to be slightly different, right?
Can you replace it with the express static one? The one that's on line 6? Can you just put it there since?
No, this is doing something different. The express.static is going to help out when, I don't know if I want to talk about that because it could be confusing. We might talk about it later. But no, you do not want to replace this. Keep this here. Absolutely. Okay.
What's the most common practice to put it in server.js or the other file?
In my estimation, I think this probably makes the most sense with your other routes. But, again, I wanted to show you the server.js way too because the pathing is maybe not as complicated. It's a little bit simpler. So here, if we do it here, we could say app.all asterisk, same thing, right? And then we're passing in this callback, rec res, and then I'm doing res.sendFile, dir name. Only this time my path, since I'm actually in the root of my project, my path is just going to be public/dist/public. Okay. Dist public. And then I also need to tack on the index.html there. So let's save this. And let's try to refresh our page. There we go. All right. So that fixed the problem of refreshing our application and having Express say. There's no route for that. Okay? And notice how down here it's saying new task works. So that's what we were expecting, right? Because I went task/new. Okay, cool. All right, any questions on that before we move on to the next parts? Yes, Anthony.
So that's using the build, right? So what if you did serve? Do you still need that whole line? Because then you're not using your express server, right?
Yeah, don't use serve within the context of these full stack projects. Serve is, you're only going to want to use serve if you're making a project that doesn't have a backend, or that where you're not making the backend. If you're making requests to some outside service, you can use ng-serve. In our case, we want our application to be served by Express, like this. Okay. All right, very good. So let's actually put some things in those components because we've got our routing pretty much working the way that we want. I'm also going to create a link at the top of our, hey guys, skim that chatter, huh? All right. So at the top of our app component, I'm actually going to put a link so that we can go to all our tasks. So no matter what page I'm on, I can just click that link to take me back to all tasks. So let's start with that. Let's go to our app component.html. And I'm just going to put up here at the top a link. So normally our links would be like this, href equals something, right? In this case, because we're using Angular routing, we want to put router link and then the actual route that you're trying to go to. So this is just going to be a link to all tasks. So I'm going to go /tasks. And then we'll put all tasks inside here. And let's make sure this works. So if I refresh this here, what the heck? Yeah. I know, yeah. What? There's no error there. 4 unchanged chunks. What did I do?
Oh, I have the button still.
That was weird. I commented it out and then it didn't have a problem. But no error in my terminal? Well, there's not, yeah. There shouldn't actually be anything in the JavaScript console because I actually made it to. The heck? Why am I seeing? Huh. Yeah, shouldn't matter in this case, but
Yeah, I don't have square brackets. I'm getting that link up there.
And you need square brackets around your router and your
yeah, because the thing is now it's actually looking for it's now looking for a variable called tasks, right? Which I don't have.
You need square brackets around that route, but within the quotes, the quote, single quotes around the route.
This should work though. Router link like that. You're not having any trouble with this, right, Michael?
Yeah, mine works.
But I have the button enabled. I forget what you did to change. Like the click to show all the tasks.
Right.
I forget what you changed concerning that. But that's the only thing that's different.
It's like it's flashing on the page and then it's redirecting us right away, right?
Oh yeah.
Why is it doing that? What is it, and what does that have to do with this router link that I just inserted in there? All right, maybe we'll come back to that part.
A lot of this error, we should just say heck of a mean test.
Yeah, well, let's take a quick glance at the router link docs on Angular, because that should work, what I had there. Yeah, it was, and then it was redirecting me, right?
It's still because you still have your JSON type. So I guess you're switching to JSON since you have the No, I'm saying somehow everything else is not being loaded except for that JSON type.
So are you using the app.all in your server.js or the one?
Yeah, I'm using the server.js one right now. This shouldn't make any kind of a difference because, as Connor mentioned there, we are actually getting this route rendered by Angular, so that part is okay. I don't know. See, so notice how here we should actually be able to do this. We just say router link equals some static route like that. The fact that it's not giving me a console error, though, is a little troubling. Because I've got my console open up here, and if I uncomment that route, it does not seem to like it. So if I look inside here, ooh, got an iframe. Yeah, that's probably a good idea. So we go Chrome extensions. JSON viewer. Let me just. Oh, it's our. Is this already disabled? Oh, I've got another one. JSON handle. Okay, cool. All right, let's try that again. God darn JSON handle. Everything was working all along. All right, I'm really sorry about that, guys. All right, so let's just make sure that this link works. So if we click on this here, hey, great. Took us back to tasks, right? And then if we look down here, we're on all tasks. So everything's working great. We're in good shape. What if I put in some bad route here, like bunk, page not found works, right? Okay, so that part's working as well. So all we really need to do is just kind of flesh out these routes a little bit more. We have them working. They're going to the right place. Let's just put some logic in those components so that they look the way that we expect them to. Okay, so my all tasks component, let me close this out. Our all tasks component is basically just going to have this table of tasks, right? Let's grab this whole thing. And then I'm going to dump that inside my all tasks component. So here, open up the HTML, and instead of all tasks works, let's just paste in what we had already. Okay. However, do I have reference to these tasks yet inside this component? No, because I haven't put the logic yet in the .ts file. So we need to actually go and retrieve all of our tasks, right? Okay. Let's practice doing that. So I'll save this guy, and let's open our all tasks component.ts. So what do we need to bring in here to make the request to get all of our tasks?
Input?
No.
Oh,
No. How do we retrieve all of our tasks? What do we need? We're going to grab our HTTP service, right? The HTTP service is the thing that we're using to interact with our backend right now. Okay? And I will inject that into the constructor. So I'm going to say private HTTP service, which is an instance of type HTTP service. And again, if I click tab, it will import it for me, which is nice. Okay, great. So inside of our on init, this is where we can actually go grab all of our tasks, right? So what we were doing before is we had this variable up here, just called tasks, and it was set to an empty array, right? Now inside here, how am I going to get all my tasks? I'm going to use this HTTP service. So we'll say something like this HTTP service. And then I had this function here called getAllTasks. And what's that going to return to me again? An observable. Okay, cool. So I can subscribe to that. Subscribe. Okay, it's going to give me back some data, theoretically. I'll say that data can be of type any. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say tasks, this.tasks, equals data.tasks that I just got back. Okay, so let's see if that's working. If I go to tasks, now we've got things duplicated because I guess I didn't save my app component. Let me save my app component real quick. Okay. So this is good. We're seeing all of our tasks down here. This is being rendered inside that router outlet, right? Okay. I Excellent. Any questions about what we just did there? You guys good with this part? Getting our tasks? Yeah? All right. Fair enough. So inside my my app component.ts, I was going to just rip out some of the code that we didn't need anymore. So we go in here. So we no longer need to get all of our tasks, right? Because we're actually doing this from the tasks component. Do we want our select task to be in there still? Probably not. Still this, and then we're no longer going to be getting all of our tasks on init, right? Okay, so that's for now. So the next component that we want to touch on is just going to be the new task component. So we already had this form that we built. Let's take that code and let's move it over to our new task route. Okay. Inside of this, here's our form. Let's take all of this right here. Grab that, I'll save that, and then we'll go back to our new task component. Paste that in. So what else do I need to do to make this work? So right now we've got this two-way data binding that's happening inside the form. Where else do I need to make sure that's wired up?
The TS.
Yeah, in the TS file that goes with this new task component. All right, so let's go in there, open up this TS file. So what am I going to need to bring in? Again, because I'm going to be interacting with my backend, right?
We're gonna have to inject
Going to have to inject what?
the HTTP.
My HTTP service, right? So let's go inside the constructor here. Let's say private HTTP service. It's going to be an instance of type HTTP service. Okay, and then it imported it for me. I also needed to have that on submit method, right? Or submit handler, I think is what we were calling it. And I'm just kind of rewriting this stuff. I could obviously easily grab that code and just paste it in, but I want you guys to sort of always see these steps so that they make the most sense. So what were we doing inside of our submit handler? You guys remember how this form worked at all?
The name and the title and the description.
Yeah, so the first thing that I had done is I created this new task object up at the top. And that was just creating some blank inputs for us. So new task is an object. We've got title, which is blank to begin with. Description, which is blank to begin with. And then also we had a completed as well. And that was just going to be false to begin with, right? Okay. So what we're going to do when this form is submitted is we're going to take this .new task and we're going to send that to our backend using our service. All right. So let's do that. So let's say this dot HTTP service. And what's the method that we had? We had create task, right? We're going to pass in this .new task. Okay. And now I'm going to subscribe to that because this is going to return me an observable. So we'll say .subscribe. And when this comes back, actually instead of just pushing it to my tasks list, what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate back to my all tasks route. Okay? So after I've successfully created one, let's just go back to all tasks. All right? How do we do that? So we need to inject something else. This will be fun. We also need to inject a router. Okay? Yeah, this will be fun. So let's say here, private router, and it will be of type router. And let's see if Angular can do its thing. Tab gives me the auto import. Very nice. So what's going to happen is when I successfully create my my new task, I'm going to pass in this callback function, which is simply going to navigate us back to all tasks, right? So we'll say this dot router dot navigate. Okay? So that's this router right here, and then we're just going to navigate to the all tasks page. Now, one thing about the navigate function is you guys have to pass in an array like this. Okay? So the route that you're navigating them to could have multiple components or multiple pieces to it. But in our case, we're just simply routing them to tasks. All right? So let's see if our new tasks is working the way that we expect it to. In fact, let me just create a link for it up at the top of the app component. So where's my app component? Ooh, starts getting hard to see this stuff. Okay. All right. So I'm going to have one more route up here, which will just be for creating a new task. So we'll say a router link tasks/new create task. All right, refresh it here so we can create a task. Wow, there's no space between those two links. Sorry about that. All right, so we're at our new task page. This is good. Now let's try creating one, and let's see if we can navigate successfully back to the all tasks. Okay. Do something. Do it some way. Completed. Yes. And there we go. We created the new task, and then we immediately just navigated back to my all tasks page. Okay? Any questions about that? So we just imported this router from Angular, and then we used it to navigate. Where is that? New task component. Okay. Ryan, tell me what's going on here on line 26.
This dot, sorry, I can't really see it great, but
Sorry, I'll make it a little
it's
bigger.
not the size. I'm just at a weird glare.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Okay, so we've got a function called submit handler. We're doing our this.http service. I always forget why we do that. I just know we have to do it. Just know it goes.
So
there.
we're referencing this HTTP service that we injected, right?
Okay. And then it's running .create task,
Mhm.
passing in this .new task,
Right.
which is which contains information.
So why are we subscribing to it? What does this return us?
It turns our data or task info or our new task, but I don't know why we subscribe.
So when we call this function, the create task function, what does that return to us? It has a return value, right?
Yeah, is it a promise or a observable?
Close, observable, very good. That's why we're subscribing, right? Okay. Cool. So let's assume that our subscription has been fired. So in other words, our data came back from the back end. Okay, cool. Now this callback gets called, right? It gets invoked. And what is that callback doing?
Let me think about it just a second. Oh, it sends us or that to /task.
Correct. So it's just rerouting the user right now to the /task route. Okay.
I should have said yeah. Didn't really know how to say them. I guess I should say
Them. Okay, no problem. All right, cool. So the last thing that I want to show you guys is, so we've got these components working the way that we want. We also want to have a component that shows a single task, right? That would be pretty good. We don't really have that yet, but we're going to make it. So here in our, I've got this single task component here. And let me just make sure this works. So if I go tasks/some ID or whatever, I'll just put in some nonsense or whatever. This is good. So we're getting single task, right? Okay, cool. All right. Now the question is, how do I actually extract this part of my route path so that I can go and make a call to my backend to go get the data for that specific task? Okay. Let's see how we can do that. So I'm going to close some files here. Okay, so in my single task component, I'm going to inject something here. All right. So again, I'm going to inject, this time it will be the router again, okay? And again, if I tab there, it will import it for me, which is kind of nice. And when this component is initialized, what I want to do is I want to go and grab that task by ID, right? Okay, so let's see how we can do that. So using the router that we just injected, I can say this dot underscore router dot params. Whoa, why did it do that? Okay, and what? Oh, you know what? I injected the wrong thing. We actually need to bring in activated route is what we want. Okay, not the router itself. Let me change this real quick. So we'll say activated route. Activated route. And then down here, instead of router, let's just say the current route is going to be of type activated route. Okay? And now we can say route.params. So the current route that we're on is going to have some params that we can then subscribe to. So I'll say dot subscribe. It's going to give me back some params, and they're going to be of type params. Now when I click tab after typing that in, it also imported params for me as well. So that's nice. All right, cool. Now, for now, let's just log these params just to see what they look like. So we'll say console.log params. Okay, I'll go back here, open up the console, and let's refresh the page. So notice here that I now have this object. I guess it broke it somewhere. Sorry, I'm going to change this because if you guys notice that that semicolon right there seems to have caused it to break into two sections. Now I have two params. That's not really what I intended. Just go like that. Okay. So again, when we initialize this component, we're subscribing to the params. And then you can see the params object just has this ID in it. Okay? And that's the ID that I'm going to use to go get that task by ID. All right, cool. So let's do that. So let's come in here. Instead of just logging this out, let's say we need to inject our service, right? Because the service is what's going to go get the task for us. HTTP service. HTTP service. Oops. Okay. All right, so in here, I'm going to say this.http service dot get, I don't have a method for this yet, right? All I have is get all tasks and create tasks. So we have to make this now. Let's go back to our service. All I need is a get task by ID. Task by ID, and what do I want to take in there? Probably an ID, right? Okay, what do I want to return? An observable, cool. That's going to make what kind of request? A get request to just /API/tasks. And then I need to add on this ID here, right? So I'm going to concatenate the ID so that I go make the request to the right place. Okay. Very good. So now if I go back to my single task component, I should have this get task by ID. Okay. And what am I going to pass to that? Params.id. Yes, very good. Perfect. Params.id. Okay. Now, what's that going to return me? Another observable. Woo! All right. So we have to subscribe to that as well. All right. Now, before we finish the logic in here, let's just set up as sort of an empty task here, or we'll set a task to be null initially, and then later on we'll replace that. Okay. So let's say task equals null, and then once I get it back from my backend, then I will just simply replace it with what I got. So I'm going to subscribe. I'm going to get some data, which I'll say is of type any, and then I'm going to say this dot task equals data dot task. Okay. All right. So in order for us to display this on the page, I'm going to use an ngIf. You guys remember why? Because in the beginning, when I first load up this page, I won't have the task yet, right? And I have to go back to my backend to get the task first. Once I have it, now I'm okay. Now I can go ahead and display it. So let's do that. Let's go inside our single task component. And let's just create a little div here. Inside that div, let's do ngIf. Yeah, exactly. So we'll say task not equal to null. Okay, so if it's not null, let's just have an h1 here. And then we use the double mustache tags because we're going to say task.title. P tag down here, then we'll have task.description. And then finally we'll have task.completed. Okay. All right, very good. So in order to make this work, we also need to be able to route to this page, right? I mean, right now I can sort of put in some bogus ID and it'll tell me, you know, it will attempt to retrieve that from the back end. Obviously that won't work because it's just an ID I made up, right? So what we could do inside of our all tasks component is let's change it up a little bit. So instead of having this view task, which is running this, select task, well, actually, let's just change our select task function, right? We could use that to potentially navigate to this individual task page. So let's look what that, see what that function looks like right now. Oh, I deleted it. Never mind. All right, so let's just rewrite it. Select task was taking in a task, right? And what I'm going to do is I need to navigate when I click on that button. So what did I need to bring in to navigate again? You guys remember? I need to inject the router, right? Okay, so let's do that here in the constructor. Right now I'm only injecting the HTTP service. Let's inject the router. Okay. So when we click on this, I'm going to say this dot underscore router dot navigate. And again, we need to pass it an array like this. So we're going to go to /tasks / and then I'm going to add on to it the task ID. Okay. So we'll say task. Is it .id or .underscore ID? Underscore ID. Very good. Nice. All right. So let's try it out. Let's go to our all tasks page. Let me refresh this real quick. Let's see if we can click on view for master Angular. Oh, what do you know? So it took us where we wanted to go, and then when we got there, we went out and reached back to the back end to go get the data for that. Right? Okay, I know we've gone on really long today, so I want to see if you guys have any questions here. Otherwise, I fear that I'm putting you to sleep. Any, yeah, just work on. Are there any specific spots you guys want to take a quick look at of what we covered? We covered a lot of ground.
Honestly, I think the only part I'm super nervous about is forgetting a step and creating a project.
You mean with the back end part?
Yeah, just like create like
The front end?
Yeah, just like creating just the NG watch and this and that. Just creating, going through the whole step of like actually building out a project folder. That's the only thing I'm really nervous about.
Yeah, sometimes in that case, if you haven't been able to maybe work on as many projects as you would have liked, it could be helpful to kind of create yourself a little cheat sheet.
That's what I'm gonna do. Yeah, just like step by step.
Yeah, completely agree with that. All right. Questions, Anthony?
Well, I was gonna ask if you could go over the single task part again, how you.
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
The two observable.
All right. Yeah, an observable within an observable,
Yeah.
right? It's like nested callbacks almost. All right. Yeah. So let's see what's going on here. So we take our params, okay, which is coming from the activated route, and then we're subscribing to those params. Okay. So when that subscription fires and I have access to my params, then I'm saying, let's use our HTTP service to go get a task by ID, and then I'm taking that params object and just passing in the ID. Okay?
Oh, okay.
So once I pass in the ID of the correct task, then I can subscribe to that observable, right?
So this dot route is a get request.
No. No, this dot route, this is the actual route object that we injected to the component. So remember here, we were injecting the activated route. This is the current route that we're on. So that's what that is. And you could call it something else if you wanted. If you wanted to call this like activated route, you could do that as well.
And so when you use that, it returns an observable.
Yeah, so when we get this params, that's giving us an observable that we can subscribe to, right?
Okay.
So then inside there, we're running this method to go get a task by ID, which is returning us another observable. All right, so later on today, we're going to do an author's demo. And that will have routing, that will have everything from the back end to the front end. It's like the whole, it's the whole shebang. Yeah, it's the full stack, the ultimate demo.
What time we want to do that?
We want to do that around 3-ish. Yeah. So let me just stop the video here.